If I was asked how much of this shape is shaded, I would say 1/3. Numerator being 1 shaded pieces, denominator being 3, how many pieces the whole is cut into. So the whole thing, which is worth whole 1, is cut into 3 pieces and 1 of them is shaded. Out of interest, if I were to shade all 3, that would be 3 out of 3, which would be the whole. We're not really looking at that right now, that's just a point of interest. So, this is 1/3. But what would happen if I cut each piece a little bit smaller? So I have to do the same to all the pieces. So if I cut each of these pieces in half, I haven't just got 1 shaded, now 2 are shaded, but it's out of 6. Now these are worth the same amount they're equivalent to. 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6, and these are called equivalent fractions. These are the same size, but they look slightly different. In this case, each piece was cut into 2, so it's twice as many. Notice we can't just cut one of the pieces like this and say, oh look, now 3 are shaded out of 7. Well, that's not true, because they're not 7 equal pieces. And really these have to be equal. But if I cut each of them like that, I could now say that 4 are shaded out of 12, and these are equivalent again. I can do this as many times as I like, as long as I make sure that I cut each piece and not just one. And you notice if I was going to get from here to here, I'd have to multiply by 4 as I cut each of the original pieces into 4. And then whatever I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. And these are equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions, as well as getting what seems to be bigger by multiplying by something, you can find an equivalent fraction by dividing. What I mean by that is, if I look at what fraction here is shaded, it's 3 pieces out of 12 pieces. Okay, and that's the shaded fraction, 3 out of 12. But I could group these together, because there are 12, 3 and 12 have a common factor of 3 in this case. So if I group these into groups of 3, that's 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. So here, what I've got now, rather than 12 pieces, is I've got 4 pieces, and the whole of one of these 4 pieces is shaded, and that's 1/4. So these are also equivalent fractions. This time though, instead of multiplying, I've divided by 3. 2 things to note here. First of all, I've divided by the highest common factor of 3 and 12. The highest factor they have in common. That'll straight away take me to what is called the simplest form. What that means is this cannot go any further by dividing, as the highest common factor of these two is now 1, so they are what's called coprime. They have no common factors except the number 1. This is it in its simplest form.